Hello and welcome to the Cinema ATL Podcast. The Cinema ATL Podcast is a weekly podcast that examines the world of entertainment through the lens of local Atlanta filmmakers. That would be us, your hosts. I'm Michael D. Friedman, and that is...
Martin Kelly.
And this week it's time once again to discuss all the shows, movies, and online videos that we've been watching. Hopefully we'll clue you into some new favorites. But first, Martin, why don't you tell our listeners how they can help the podcast out?
Well, y'all can help us out by listening, not just now. Listen again. Re-listen. Do it like 50 times. But seriously, also comment, rate, and subscribe on whichever podcast format you are enjoying this podcast on. So that could be anything from Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, Amazon Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and even on YouTube. Definitely subscribe and comment there because that helps push the message across that this podcast is enjoyable. So hopefully we hear from you and tweet us and do all those other good things.
Too legit to quit. That's what we are. We also want to hear from you. You can always tweet us at Cinema ATL, or you can reach us at our personal Twitter handles. I'm at Clever Transient.
Or hit me up at Marte_Real1.
And don't forget Instagram is at Cinema ATL Podcast.
Yeah, we do a lot of fun stuff there ordinarily when we're not too bogged down with other things, because there's some really cool stuff that we usually put out. So definitely check us out on Instagram.
I wasn't going to mention that because I haven't done much recently, but it'll come back. Don't worry.
I'm confident. It's going to come back, and it's always good stuff. And so you can pay attention to us there and interact with us there as well, but also cinemaatl.com.
Yup. Old school internet.
Definitely.
All right. Well, enough about that. Let's get into our shows we're watching now.
Yeah, so we started this during COVID since we weren't, able to go to the movies as much because the theatrical releases really ground to a halt for a while. So there weren't many big theatrical releases or even small theatrical releases to talk about. Even though theaters are now ramping back up, there's still a lot of entertainment out there outside of the theaters. So we will talk about that and even, throw in some feature releases as well.
Right. And so we're going to just run down the shows that we're binging, all the movies we're watching, and all those YouTube videos that we can't seem to escape from. So without further ado, let's reveal some of our picks. Why don't we start with TV shows?
All right, let's do it.
All right. I'll go first.
Yes.
Why don't I go first?
Yes, do it.
My first pick is What If, which is on Disney Plus. And of course, if you know me, you know I love Marvel stuff. And this is the latest Disney Plus Marvel show. This one is animated as opposed to live action. And it basically tells tales of alternate realities based off of the movies, asking the question, what if something different had happened during the films? And it has 2 episodes out now. It's been pretty interesting. And one of the cool things about this show is it actually features the voices of a lot of the actors that were in the movies. Not all of them, but a lot of them. The first episode featured Haley Atwell from Agent Carter fame. And this week's episode actually was the last performance, sadly, of Chadwick Boseman in a very interesting tale of what if T'Challa became Star-Lord. So very interesting stuff. And I used to read this comic as a kid, and it never really quite worked for me because they're trying to tell these like long stories and put them into a single 22-page issue of a comic book. But I think it works much better in the like 30-ish minute tales that they're telling here. So, Martin, have you seen that?
I traveled, so I'm definitely going to catch it, but it started right when I was doing a little bit of traveling, so I haven't caught up to it. I'm certainly looking forward to it, especially heard good things about the episode with Chadwick Boseman, and I'm going to watch it because you know me, I follow the Marvel series on Disney Plus all the time as well.
And the thing about this also is that each episode is a single tale, so you don't have to be invested in specific, long haul trying to figure out what's going on like a lot of the other Marvel stuff. This one's just like bite-sized, adjustable pieces, and just kind of fantastical, different versions of these tales that we all know. So, and the animation's really good too.
Nice. Well, yeah, I can't wait to check it out for sure. For sure. And then I'm not going to talk about it here, but then I'll be catching up on the commentary by Emergency Awesome.
Yeah.
Afterwards, after each episode, he'll tell me all the Easter eggs that I missed.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, I can't wait to see that and take it in for sure. For sure. So I'm going to talk about a TV series that I am throwing in right now here at the last minute, just to because it's thematic with one of the documentaries I'm watching, and it's Vice. It's on Vice, which I don't know if everyone gets Vice, but it's available on most cable outlets. It's called The Dark Side of the '90s, and Dark Side of the '90s is part of their Dark Side series. They have, and they're very interesting. I don't know if I mentioned it before on a previous one, but Dark Side of the Ring is like a wrestling docu-series that talks about old wrestling stars and some, infamous moments and some infamous figures in the wrestling world from days gone by. It's really interesting. I wasn't a huge wrestling person, but I know of wrestling, a little bit, and those documentaries are really interesting. Now, this happens to be their latest version. They also do Dark Side of Football, which I haven't really watched, which probably is interesting, but I just haven't watched it. And this one's called Dark Side of the '90s. And the first couple episodes that I have seen were very interesting. One is Trash TV, which is Dirty Talk and Deadly Talk, which is all about the '90s talk shows who exploded and turned into completely trash TV. Because if people remember talk shows, when I was a kid, talk shows were serious, and they bring on people and they talk about serious topics. And then in the '90s, things just got flipped around, and it talks about the evolution of that. And of course, Jerry Springer, the phenomenon that he is. Yeah. And it's not even just him, because you remember Jesse Raphael and Montel.
Morton Downey.
Morton Downey Jr. was actually '80s. He actually was a precursor, which is kind of funny. There's a great documentary about Morton Downey Jr. show, but he was a precursor to this, so he's not really covered in this. But then there's also one about the Viper Room, Hollywood Sanctuary, which is really interesting. But of course, there's some dark elements of that because, the Viper Room is where River Phoenix died right outside. And of course, Johnny Depp was the owner at the time. And an interesting thing that I never knew was Counting Crows lead singer, Adam Derwitz, I think is his name. He when he got famous, he actually had this real like identity crisis kind of thing. And he would tend bar. He would be a bartender at the Viper Room, and he felt like that connected him back to real people again. So that's an interesting fact about the Viper Room, which I hadn't known before, but it's got a long history, but of course some of it's dark and some of it's not so dark, but it's interesting. And of course they deal with the grunge sound and, TV for teens and other topics, but it's real interesting. It's really well done. So that's, if you're a docu series person, you might enjoy this. A look back into the '90s.
Cool. I'll have to check it out. My next pick is one that I think you might really like, Martin. It's called Reservation Dogs.
Oh, yes.
This is a FX series on Hulu, which to me is weird because it's not on FX, but it's only on Hulu. So why didn't they call it a Hulu original? But anyway, besides that, it's a really good show. This show is created by Sterling Harjo and Taika Waititi. It follows a group of 4 indigenous teenagers in rural Oklahoma. The group consists of Bear, who's the self-professed leader of their group, Alora Dannon, who was actually named after the baby from Willow. She is the she's like the heart of the group. Willie Jack's the tough girl, and Cheese is the kind of spacey one. And it reminds me a lot of a rougher version of Smoke Signals, which we actually talked about
Right,
in
right.
one of our Forgotten Films episodes. It also kind of reminds me a bit of Atlanta. It's got that same kind of vibe where it's like it's just about people living their lives, and some episodes don't really have a whole lot of plot to them. And it tells like small stories, and it's really fun, well told tales. I love the way it's shot. And speaking of Smoke Signals, actually the latest episode 3, it just came out this week. Gary Farmer actually guest stars in it.
Nice. That's
from
very
Signals.
cool.
So.
That's awesome.
And then the really cool thing about this is it's the entire writer's room is indigenous writers, and all the directors are indigenous as well. So we talk about diversity a lot, and this is like really, getting into some underserved communities on in entertainment, and it's really great to see, and it's really, really well done. I really liked it.
Well, cool. I know we talked about it coming when we did our Forgotten Films on Smoke Signals, so we were looking forward to it. The bad part is I don't have Hulu, so I need to get it or figure out how to watch this, because I certainly want to watch this. Sterling Harjo and Taika Waititi, I definitely trusted them to come up with something really cool, and so
just watch it on FX. Oh wait, you can't.
Yeah, I know. I thought it would be on FX. That's what I was really hoping, that it was going to actually be on FX, or at least FX on demand.
Right.
If they weren't going to broadcast it. But I'll figure something out, because I think you're right. I probably will like it. It certainly sounds like something up my alley. So looking forward to catching up to us at some point.
All right.
So next, I will talk about. I guess. What do you want to talk about? We're still talking about TV, right?
Yeah, so, we're still on TV.
Yeah. All right, so
I got more if you want me to go.
I've got way more. No, I've got way more TV, and they're both again documentary series, and I'm going to sound like a complete documentary nerd after this episode, because I've only got one thing that's outside of that, because I've already talked about Dark Side of the 90s, but one documentary series that I look forward to every year, not just because I enjoy the series, but because it means that something really cool is coming, and that is Hard Knocks on HBO. Yeah. And so Hard Knocks, of course, has run for many seasons in a row. This year they're dealing with the Dallas Cowboys, which is certainly not my favorite team at all. But it's football. It's football, and it's Hard Knocks. And Hard Knocks is really cool. There's always colorful characters. But what I love, of course, is watching these people go for their dreams. These athletes just trying to make it. That's the best part of Hard Knocks. And also the way they film, the football footage is always great and always cool and always a different angle. Because when you see these preseason games, it's not like you're watching it on television. It's actually from the field, the field angle, kind of like the NFL films used to give you all the time. And this is like the only way to really get that up close and personal type action of NFL football. So Hard Knocks, it's great. It's a great series in and of itself, but it also means football soon.
It also has a great narrator too, right? Liev Schreiber is the narrator. Yes. I don't know if he's doing it this year again, but
he is. He definitely is. He definitely is.
And I also heard that Dan Quinn is kind of quite a character on this season.
Well, so kind of funny. So far, and I didn't know he brought a coach, an assistant from Atlanta, who I wasn't even familiar with, who is actually he's so funny. He's got a foul mouth, as you would expect a football coach. He's a down and dirty defensive line coach, but he's from London, and so he's got a British accent. What's his name? It's like I forget. I'm sorry, I'm going to blank on his name completely, because
that's all right. I just have to watch the show to figure it out.
Yeah, watch the show. But it sounds like you're watching Hard Knocks, and you're hearing the classic narration by Liev Schreiber, and then you're seeing all the other characters. They sound exactly like you would expect football players to sound like, and then you hear a guy out of a Guy Ritchie movie cursing at the players, telling them to get their ass in gear and all this other stuff. And apparently he coached with Dan Quinn in Atlanta, or was at least on the staff, not necessarily a coach, but
Mm-hmm.
he played in NFL Europe, so that's his background. But it
Interesting.
was really fun to see him. So you always discover something new with Hard Knocks, so it's
Right.
always very cool.
Well, you mentioned you might come off as a documentary nerd. I'm going to come off as a nerd with my next pick.
Okay.
And it's Masters of the Universe Revelation.
Oh
This
my
is,
goodness.
uh, this is on Netflix. It's an animated reboot of the old Masters of the Universe TV show, He-Man, of course.
Uh-huh.
And this one is actually produced by Kevin Smith, who
Yeah.
also serves as the showrunner.
Yeah.
And it's got a great voice cast. It's got Mark Hamill as Skeletor, and it also features such actors as Sarah Michelle Gellar, Lena Headey, Alicia Silverstone, Stephen Root, Henry Rollins, and of
Wow.
course, Jason Mewes is going to be in it. And the thing about this one is, like, I tuned in the first episode just to kind of see what they did with it, and it really starts out really corny. It feels like the old '80s TV show,
Uh-huh.
with stupid characterization, and I'm like, oh god, this is not very good. But it makes a shift at a point in the first episode to be way more serious and way more adult oriented, and it actually turns out to be kind of an interesting story. I'm not going to reveal any
Okay.
spoilers in
Okay.
it, but
Yeah, yeah.
it actually it actually fleshes out the characters a little bit more, and it flips the whole Masters of the Universe thing on its head. And even though you still have corny characters like Lockjaw and Man at Arms and all those guys, it actually kind of makes it a little more serious, and it's still fun, and actually made Orko a likable character. Believe it or not, I
Oh, wow.
freaking hated Orko. Wasn't a fan.
Right. Right.
But yeah, it's worth checking out. It's only 5 episodes. It's like the first half of the first season, and then they're going
Okay.
to do 5 more episodes later. But
I
so yeah,
I totally was planning to just take a look at it just because I knew Kevin Smith's involvement and I knew some of the celebrities that he had been dealing with. Like I saw Sarah Michelle Gellar post about it or something like that. But so I certainly was going to watch it. Speaking of documentary nerds, have you ever seen the He-Man documentary about the He-Man TV show?
no, I've seen the Toys That Made Us episode about it. I haven't
Oh,
seen the
that's it.
show.
That must be what I'm thinking of. That must
Yeah.
be what I'm thinking of. But it was
Okay.
pretty good. It was pretty good for sure.
Yeah,
But
that's another series that actually just came out. And sorry to just throw another series in there, but the Movies That Made Us season 2 came out just recently too.
oh,
If you're into
well,
documentaries, there's some good
to,
ones there. Back to the
totally
Future, Jurassic Park, some
yes.
really good ones.
I'm totally gonna get back into that for sure. Absolutely. So, cool, man. That sounds good, and can't wait. I can't wait to just check it out, and I hope it is entertaining because I do have fond memories as a kid watching He-Man. So, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. So, continuing in series and continuing in documentary series, there's a new, again, HBO documentary series called Music Box, which is created by Bill Simmons of 30 for 30 fame in Sports Illustrated and among
Oh
other
yeah, yep.
among other things. And the first of the series of Music Box is Woodstock '99: Peace, Love, and Rage. And this is, again, the Music Box is going to be an anthology documentary series. But this particular episode relates to the 90s, of course, because it's the end of the 90s. And it showcases the debacle that was the Woodstock Music Festival of 1999. So it examines the disaster from the conception to the planning to the execution. It really has its own take. I mean, I think there's it gives a little bit of short shrift to some people who may have differing opinions on what happened and why it devolved. The series actually, has a really specific point of view of what they think it meant and that kind of thing. And, I think they stretch a lot. I mean, this is one of the things I enjoy watching documentaries, even though sometimes I think they stretch points a little too thin,
Right.
and try to really leap to some conclusions. And of course they always try to relate it to now, you know what I mean? So this is trying to relate things to what's going on now. And it's like, okay, yeah, sure, maybe. But I mean, it does make some good points, and it's a lot of really unique footage, and some of it is even tragic. I mean, some of it's funny and some of it's tragic, though, of what happened. Like there's some people who actually lost their lives at the festival, and
Right.
that's something that people don't know about. But what they also, one of the big points of the documentary, and I'm not going to give too much away, is that the Woodstock 99 may seem ill-conceived, but we think of that only because we think of the original Woodstock and even 94 as these idyllic music festivals that really
Right.
weren't idyllic. You know what I
No.
mean? But we're led to believe that just through the prism of a famous documentary film about the original Woodstock and this nostalgic view of that whole time. Uh,
Right.
the festival itself was pretty much a disaster too, but it doesn't feel like it. And so this, when 99 happened and everyone acknowledged what a disaster it was, they were shocked and they shouldn't have been, probably.
Right. All right. Well, taking a little lighter look, my next TV show pick is Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which is back for its final season on NBC. The story of Brooklyn Nine-Nine is kind of interesting how it survived all this time. It started on Fox, was canceled, picked up by NBC. And then this final season was actually delayed by COVID and then also by the civil rights protests after the death of George Floyd. The writers and the producer of the show actually threw out a whole half of a season of scripts and started over again due to the events, because it was such a time when, how do you make a comedy about police officers? And so they really wanted to take a look at what they were doing and really take a different look at this in light of all the things that have gone on. And but I love this show. It's always been a favorite of mine. I love Andy Samberg. I love all the characters in it, especially the Captain Raymond Holt, played by, why am I blanking on his name? Andre Braugher.
Yes.
He's terrific in Brooklyn Nine-Nine. You should watch it for him alone, even if you don't like Andy Samberg. And so this season started out, it just premiered after the Olympics on NBC. The first episode, they really addressed the issue of civil rights head on, and it's a little awkward, a little bit, in my mind, a little preachy, but I think they had to do that. It's still a funny episode, but then it actually gets right back on track with the episode 2, back to the silliness of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. So I wanted to just show my respect for the people running the show, that they actually took this, addressing this head on and not trying to avoid it. And I think they did a good job with it, even though it might have felt a little awkward. So, but anyway, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, one of my favorites. You can binge the past seasons if you want to as well. But then the final season is airing now on NBC.
Do you need to? I mean, I've seen several episodes of Brooklyn Nine-Nine, probably over different seasons, and definitely not seen all of them for sure. So, if I wanted to just pick up this season, would I have any trouble?
No, you wouldn't. But you should do yourself a favor and watch the rest of them, because they're really funny.
But there's so much to watch. I'm trying to catch up on Rick and Morty, even.
Well, then you're gonna hate my next pick.
Oh God. Okay. So let me go light and airy with my next. Actually, no. If you got one more TV show, you might as well say it, because I've got movies after this.
My next TV show is actually an old TV show, and you're talking about so much to binge. And I've been binging it because we talked last episode about how I hurt my ankle, so I've been sitting on the couch a lot watching TV. And on Netflix, you can watch it on Netflix or Hulu, is Community.
Right.
Which is one of my favorite sitcoms of all time. And I had loved it when it was on originally. I bought the DVDs when they came out, and I just trying to find something to entertain me for a while. I put on, episode 1 just to relive it. And I'm now up to season 4. And these are long seasons. The first 3 seasons of Community are like 25 episodes piece.
Right. They were traditional TV seasons.
But they're really, if you haven't watched Community, it's a really funny show, and it's the perfect season to binge, or perfect series to binge, because, when we're watching on Netflix with no commercials, it just really flies by. They're like 22-minute episodes, but they also like have storylines that go through the seasons and callbacks to previous episodes that I didn't think I really realized when I was watching it on a weekly basis, because they're so long between episodes. When you watch them back to back to back, it's really, they really connect, and it's really fun. And so, so there's 6 seasons of Community, 6 seasons. One of the in jokes in it is 6 seasons in a movie. They haven't done the movie yet, but here's hoping. They actually had a table read for charity while COVID was going on, and they had all the cast back except for Chevy Chase, who, if you know the history behind Community, he left on bad terms.
Right.
But they were talking about, well, maybe there could be a movie. So even Donald Glover seemed to be on board. So
that's pretty. It's another one where I've been meaning to catch up on it, and I never do. I mean, it's very funny how my personality is. I do want to watch all these things, but then I just binge. I'll not binge. I'll just rewatch an old movie all the time rather than start a series, because I think I do get afraid of maybe spending like an all-nighter, if I start binging one. You know what I mean? I've done that before, so sometimes I'm a little hesitant about that. So
yeah. Especially the ones where they end on a cliffhanger and you're like, oh, what's going to happen
exactly.
next? And Community kind of actually does that. Not in the cliffhanger aspect, but you do want to see what happens next based off of things that happen. Even though it's not like a serialized story, they are. You could drop in and watch a single episode and still have a laugh, but they do work together.
No, totally. And they've been playing. They've actually, I think, a couple weekends ago, they played like speaking of Donald Glover, they played like a marathon of Atlanta. So I watched that whole thing on regular television.
With commercials.
With commercials. So I'm in danger of doing that. So I kind of keep myself from doing it all the time. So okay, so that's the TV section, and I'll just talk about movies next, right? And then you're going to talk. Movies. You're going to talk about. You don't have any movies. And you're going to talk about
I tried to find a movie, and the only thing that I could think of that I even kind of enjoyed recently is Suicide Squad, and we reviewed that last episode.
Right.
So if you want to know my thoughts on that,
listen to it. Yeah, there you go. Exactly.
That's all I got to say about that. So Martin, give us some movies.
All right,
give me something to watch.
Let's go with an Amazon Prime. You can see it elsewhere too, but it's available on Amazon Prime, so I kind of list that as the main source. It's a movie called Our Friend, and this was directed by Gabriella Cowperthwaite, and she's known for a documentary called Blackfish, which is about killer whales. It was a very well-acclaimed documentary, that was. It's written by Brad Inglesby, and if you don't know that name, Brad Inglesby actually did a series we did on one of these shows a while back called Mayor of Easttown. And he's actually the writer behind that series, but he wrote the script to this. It stars Jason Segel, Dakota Johnson, and Casey Affleck. And it's based on a true story, based on an essay by Matthew Teague, or essay or a feature story called The Friend, Love is Not a Big Enough Word, which was published in Esquire, and it won the National Magazine Award when it was published. So this is a kind of under the radar film. I don't think people realize that this came out, and maybe it came out kind of under the radar during the shutdown and just didn't, nobody knew about it. It's actually, I've read that I like the movie. I found it to be a nice movie, which was, depressing at times. So it's bittersweet, because Bittersweet's got sweet moments. It's also dealing with death, so it's got other moments too. So, I felt it balanced that pretty well. But I read some critics, and critics were upset. And it's just that classic story about, the book is better, or in this case, the article's better, because it's darker. And I'm like, well, why does it have to be so dark? You know what I mean? I think the movie does its own thing. And so I think it treats the material with respect, but yet it tries to be a little bit heartwarming. in a way, and life affirming in a way, even in a
Right.
movie about death. So I enjoyed it. The critics have not enjoyed it, but I would recommend it if you like any of those actors. And Jason Segel, of course, is very watchable. He's very good in this film. Casey Affleck, he's like understated as usual. Like Casey Affleck is so understated a lot in the films he does, and so again
Right.
he's understated, and so he's perfect for the role. And there's some adorable children in the film, and again, I like the film, and I like it because it's not a complete, dour film,
Right.
which the
Right.
critics seem to want, because the article, which was probably super powerful, but at the same time, I don't know that I want to watch 2 hours of it. Like if I read the article, I might appreciate it. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Right.
But I'm not going to sit 2 hours in that space. This dour treatment of death. So I liked it. Our friend.
Speaking of Casey Affleck, this is not a movie. This is a YouTube clip that you can look up uh, his guest on SNL where he did the Dunkin' Donuts commercial. Look that clip up. It's hysterical. It's so funny.
Definitely. I definitely need to check that out. Okay, so my turn again?
Well, if you have another movie, it's your turn.
I do.
Because
I
I
have
don't
another
have one.
movie, and we've been trying to be light and airy, and this does not do the trick because it's called The Divide, and it's a documentary on Netflix, available on Netflix. And The Divide tells the story of 7 individuals striving for a better life in the modern day United States and British economy, where the top 0.1% owns as much wealth as the bottom 90%. And so
Right.
by plotting the tales together, it kind of uncovers sort of the state of the world and the gap between the rich and the poor. So this movie was actually done. This is what's really shocking about it is this movie was done like 2018. So this is before the new problems that have caused more problems in this area. You know what I mean?
Right.
This is done before the crushing of the middle class. By this by lockdowns and other things and honestly some policies that are really hurting middle class people in a lot of ways. And what's happening is a continuation of what you see in this film, which is sort of the corporatization and the globalization movement, and these gigantic corporations just taking over the resources of the world, But in this case, of course, United States and Great Britain, and they show how that works. It's really interesting. Again, what I'll say about these, I like watching these things, even though I don't agree with every point that's being made in them, because some of it is overstated, I think. But at the same time, this is very powerful stuff, and it does speak to problems that are arising. And I think the stuff that's going on now is even worse. You know what I mean? Because you've got a class of small businesses going out of business and going out forever, right? And even property owners who are getting drowned out, and yet who's filling that void? It's Wall Street companies, you know what I mean, and hedge funds, and they're going to own everything. They're going to be sort of the robber barons. They're actually going to be the land barons now. In this world after it's all said and done at some point. So it's a good documentary, very thoughtful. Get your mind in working in that space, but at the same time, it just makes you wonder about where we're going economically.
Right.
So obviously, barrel of laughs.
Loads of fun. Feel good hit of the summer. All right. Well, there's our movie section. And then I've got some YouTube stuff that I've been into recently that I want to share with you.
And I hope they're fun. I hope they're actually fun.
Well, this one is kind of fun, kind of, I don't know.
Oh, no.
So this is a documentary series. It's called The History of the Atlanta Falcons.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know if you've heard of this. It's
No.
a 7-part series that covers the entirety of the Atlanta Falcons history. It's produced by Dorktown Secret Base. They do a lot of YouTube analysis through graphs and charts and statistics and stories and things like that. They did a 6-part series last year of this history of the Seattle Mariners, and this is their second long form coverage of a team. So they chose the Falcons because we've got a very, very interesting series history.
Yes.
And it's like I said, 7 parts, and the first episode is 45 minutes.
Wow.
So
Okay.
this is going to be like 6+ hours by the time it's done. And like I said, it's really well done. I don't know if you've ever seen any of the Dorktown stuff, but they talk about sports, and they use graphs and charts and statistics and stories, and they really get fascinating tales, uncovering things through statistics that you might not realize. This does a lot of that, but it also tells just kind of some of the interesting, funny or not so funny stories about the Falcons, including their head coach who smoked on the sidelines and cussed people out and threatened to fight reporters, and
yes,
about the running back who was trying to get 1,000-yard season, got the 1,000 yards, but on the next play he lost 5 yards and lost his 1,000-yard season. So it's a tale of the Falcons, which is kind of bittersweet. It's like
totally,
it's really cool that they're doing this deep dive on our team.
Yeah.
And yes, it starts out with Super Bowl 51. You know, they were going to start there. So that's the tone for the series, but I think it really will help people understand Falcon fans and what we've gone through as Falcon fans, and give light to a team that a lot of people don't think about unless you're from Atlanta.
Right.
And this is getting national attention. The Seattle Mariners one got a lot of awards, and people are talking like this could even, maybe there's a YouTube thing that might be nominated for an Emmy or something like that.
Oh, that
because
would be
it's so
amazing,
well done.
yeah.
It's so in depth. It's so detailed. It's really fascinating. And even as a Falcons fan, if it kind of breaks my heart, I'm still enraptured by it.
Yes, you got to send me the link. You got to send me the link. Just I'm probably going to go find it myself, but in case I don't, send me the link, because I'm all in for this for sure.
Will do. And yeah, check out their other stuff too. It's Dorktown.
Yeah, the other stuff sounds great. Yeah.
SB Nation is like the host of it.
Got it. Okay.
The main site that hosts it.
So they do. That's who hosts Falcoholic, right? The Falcoholic.
They're part of the SB Nation network.
SB Nation, right? Okay.
So there's actually links on the Falcoholic about this series. So if you want,
got it. Oh, I haven't been lately. So okay, definitely.
And then finally, to wrap it up on a much lighter note, discovered this recently. Dave Watkins was the one that tuned me into this. It's called Pitch Meetings. It's by Screen Rant.
Oh yes.
And it's basically a guy who plays both the writer and the producer, and he's pitching movies that have come out recently or been, older movies or whatever. Uh-huh. And he does it in such a funny way. And he basically just deconstructs every movie, like nitpicks everything that's kind of wrong with it, but like pitches it like he's so excited about it.
Right. Yes.
We're just like, oh yeah, that's great. That's awesome. And, and he's got like this catchphrase where like, oh, that'd be hard to get out of. And he's like, no, it'll be super easy, barely an inconvenience. And then we'll just have it happen off screen, and stuff like that. And that's like in every episode, and it's really funny. And the guy that plays the parts, his name is Ryan George. It's really funny. If you like movies, if you like making fun of bad movies, it's even funnier. And he tears apart every movie. So even like the classics, Star Wars and everything like that.
Nice.
And there's like hundreds of these online. So you can I've spent way too long watching these. Like one night I was up until 2 a.m. watching, I want to watch another one. Oh, there's this one. They got this one too. Yeah. Oh, wow. And if you have any doubts, I would just suggest watching the Tomorrow War episode. Because it's
watch
brilliant.
that first, right?
Yeah,
Watch that
I
first.
mean, if you've seen Tomorrow War and understand how bad it is, this will make it even worse. So,
That's
really,
awesome.
really funny stuff. Really, I would highly recommend. And in fact, because they release new episodes every Tuesday of like the biggest release. So every Tuesday, I'm like, okay, which movie is he going to do this week? And
Nice.
He did Suicide Squad. He did Fast and Furious. All those things. So.
Cool. That sounds awesome.
Really fun. And I've actually watched ones for movies that I haven't even seen to see if I really like how badly does he tear us to shreds, because
right.
Like he did, like this week he did Old, the new M. Night Shyamalan movie, and he tore it to pieces. And I'm like, okay, well, I was thinking about maybe checking out, but I don't know now. But also, I think if you watch a lot of these though, you could get kind of, I don't know, like
jaded.
Exactly. The word's jaded. Yeah. Because there's so many like things that are just like, oh yeah, you're right. I never thought about that.
Right.
Why did they do that? But it's still funny. So like, yeah, maybe don't go down the rabbit hole like I did and get too jaded on like, all films suck. But it's really funny.
Cool.
So that's it. That's all I got.
Sounds great. Yeah. We went a little longer than we expected.
Yeah, we went overboard.
But yeah, it sounds like a lot of great stuff. And next time I promise to do a little more narrative stuff, not be a documentary nerd all the time. But I like them, even when I don't agree with them. You know what I mean? And again, it's not that I don't agree with them. It's just I think that some documentaries have this when they tip their hat to what they're trying to say as a documentary, I can see it. And it sort of like rubs me a little wrong, that you're trying to point in this direction without really balancing it. But I can still appreciate it, and they can still be really well done.
Well, and I know we're long, but I mean that's what's really cool about this Falcons documentary, is that they start out with Super Bowl 51 because it's an obvious place to be. Oh, hey, look at the Falcons,
Right.
But they're like, there's a lot more to this story than just this moment. And we're going to tell you exactly why it's kind of so heartbreaking that this happened.
Right.
And so it's really cool that they don't really have that agenda. Like, hey, let's pick on the Falcons. I think they picked the Falcons just because they're a team that has so many great stories associated with them that a lot of people don't know about because they're not a major team.
Exactly. We never see. That's what's so crazy about Atlanta being an Atlanta sports fan is that you would never know you had a team if you watched national sports media.
Right. Well, I think that and then they talk about the beginning of the Saints rivalry and how they really talk about how it's one of the bitterest rivalries in the NFL, and a lot of people don't know that unless you're a Saints or a Falcons fan. So. Right. I think it's really going to shine a light on the Falcons, and there might be some people that watch this documentary and say, "Hey, I like the Falcons now." So,
welcome aboard. Welcome aboard if y'all do. Yeah,
get on the bandwagon. Well, all right, we've gone way too long, but hopefully you enjoyed it, and hopefully you found some stuff that you might want to check out. As always, we want to thank Eureka Failure for providing the music as they do every week for us. And we want to ask you to share this podcast with your friends and family and neighbors and dogs and cats living together. Mass hysteria. But yeah, so Martin, before we wrap up, what are your final words of wisdom this week?
Well, this week's a rough week around the world for sure. So, in terms of what we can do, this is a quote I've seen, and I posted this. If we could spread love as quickly as we spread hate and negativity, what an amazing world we would live in. So, just a thought.
No, I agree with that sentiment exactly, and I'm not even going to make a stupid joke about it. So, I agree. Anyway, that's it for this week. We'll see you again next time on the Cinema ATL podcast. Have a good one.